Last week, a business associate of mine who runs a boutique import firm in Haiku sent me a photo that, at first glance, looked like a mistake. It was a screenshot of a transaction clearing through something called an EF account. The numbers were staggering, and the processing time was near instant, the kind of frictionless, offshore speed you'd expect in the heart of Singapore or Dubai. But he wasn't in the Middle East. He was sitting at a sun-drenched cafe in Sanya, wearing flip-flops and scrolling through his phone. He told me, "The gates just closed, but for the first time, I feel like I'm finally standing outside." It's a bizarre phrasing, isn't it? Usually when we hear the word closure, we think of endings, lockdowns, or barriers. And on December 18, when the official announcement hit the wires that Hainan was initiating its island-wide customs closure, the term sounds almost claustrophobic. You'd imagine a door slamming shut on China's tropical paradise. But if you looked at the faces of the bankers at the 11 institutions that just went live with this new system, you didn't see a sense of isolation. You saw a frantic, almost giddy rush. In a matter of hours, business volume surged past 250 billion RMB. It's a striking contradiction. A physical border is being reinforced around the entire island, yet financially, the walls have completely vanished. This is the birth of a special economic ghost, a region that is geographically inside China, but legally and financially outside the customs. It's an invisible curtain that has just been drawn across the South China Sea. But why would the world's second largest economy choose to officially close its most famous vacation island to the rest of the mainland? And what did those first 250 billion yuan actually buy? To understand the Oriental Dubai, you have to understand why the most open door in the country is the one that was just locked from the inside. So the start of this deep dive with, well, a total paradox. You have this massive political move, the island-wide custom closure, which sounds like a lockdown.
Right. It sounds like a barrier.
But instead of shutting things down, it kicks off this explosive financial opening. That initial surge we saw, that 250 billion RMB in transactions almost instantly, processed by just 11 banks, and that tells you the market knew something the headlines didn't.
It tells you the closure wasn't really a closure. It was more of an institutional reclassification. You put up the physical barrier to enable completely frictionless finance inside.
And the key piece of tech, the thing that makes it all work, is this EF account.
Exactly, the electronic fence account. Without that account, the closure is just, a lockdown. With it, it's a massive financial accelerant. It creates this truly open capital environment, but inside a closed physical perimeter.
My associate described his life before this as financial friction. That's the term he used. It cost him time, money, opportunities. So let's define that friction. What did it actually look like before?
The before picture was, it was pretty typical for any highly regulated developing financial market.
A lot of red tape.
A ton of red tape. So if a company in Hainan, or really anywhere on the mainland, wanted to pay an overseas partner in US dollars, it wasn't a simple wire transfer. Right. They had to prove to the regulators that the money even deserved to be transferred.
So they're digging up paperwork for the entire supply chain, basically.
A whole 9 yards. They needed extensive supporting materials. We're talking upstream contracts, downstream contracts, invoices, bills of lading, all sorts of approvals.
Which all had to be checked by a person.
Manually verified by a person at a bank. Yeah. That process could take 1-2 working days, sometimes even longer if there was, a tiny discrepancy.
And for a high-volume trader, a 2-day delay is a disaster.
It's catastrophic. You've got hedging risk, you miss market windows. It's just pure friction.
Okay, so that's the before. What's the experience like now with this EF account system switched on?
The change is, it's revolutionary. Companies can now handle these cross-border settlements almost entirely online.
So no more stacks of paper.
No. The system runs on a principle of digital monitoring and post-transaction oversight. Not mandatory prepayment approval. They just submit the instruction, the system verifies it, and the funds clear. Quickly, securely, often in less than 2 hours.
Less than 2 hours, down from 2 days.
Yeah. It's a total shift. You go from being treated as guilty until proven innocent to being trusted, but subject to an immediate digital audit. And that speed, it just transforms your cash flow.
That speed is a huge competitive advantage in itself. But it's more than just a faster payment system, right? It's a deeper structural change to how currency is managed.
That's the core technical innovation. It's true currency integration. For a business, the EF account uses the RMB as its main currency, but then it links multiple foreign currencies.
Like dollars, euros.
US dollar, euro, Japanese yen, you name it. They're all sub-accounts, and this is the key, they're all under the exact same account number.
Wait, one account number for everything. RMB, dollars, everything.
Precisely. In the old system, you'd have to open and manage, a whole portfolio of separate accounts, one for RMB, one for dollars, another for euros, each with its own paperwork, its own clearance process.
Which sounds like a nightmare.
It was. The EF account just unifies that entire structure. It's a one-stop shop for all your cross-border capital management. It reduces the operational load. It reduces the risk of making a mistake. It's just much cleaner.
That feels like a very sophisticated piece of financial engineering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to allow that inside China's broader capital control system must have taken a huge regulatory leap.
It did. And the name electronic fence is very intentional. The system acts as a kind of firewall. It lets capital move totally freely within the Hainan Free Trade Port, but it maintains that regulatory integrity Beijing needs for any money moving outside of it.
So it's a bubble.
It's a very advanced bubble. And the integration is one part, but the rate flexibility it offers businesses is just as critical. That's a huge competitive tool.
What do you mean by rate flexibility?
Companies can now use offshore exchange rates. So this gives them the choice. They can use the onshore rate, which is, more tightly managed by the central bank, or they can use the offshore rate, which is often more market-driven.
So they can pick whichever is better for them on any given day.
Based on market conditions, their risk strategy, whatever. The ability to optimize your foreign exchange costs like that, that's a feature of, a global financial hub. And now Hainan has it.
And the market obviously loved it. That big 250 billion RMB surge happened when the closure went official, but the system was already gaining a lot of traction before that.
Absolutely. The pre-closure numbers really proved the success of the pilot. By the end of September 2025, so just before the big launch, there were already over 600 EF accounts opened on the island.
And were they being used?
Oh, yeah. They weren't just sitting dormant. Those accounts had already handled a cumulative transaction volume of over 200 billion yuan. That's about, 28 billion US dollars?
Wow.
And that was with 76 different countries and regions. So that's clear proof that businesses were adopting this as the new highway for capital.
And it's not just a highway for simple payments. It's being built to handle the really advanced financial stuff you need to become an Oriental Dubai.
Right. The application scenarios are incredibly comprehensive. It reflects that ambition. It covers the basics, of course, cross-border trade settlement, but it quickly gets into sophisticated instruments, spot and forward foreign exchange, different kinds of loans, trade financing, offshore lending.
So the full toolkit.
The entire financial toolkit an international corporation needs to really base its treasury operations in Hainan.
Okay, so the EF account explains how the money rushed in, but it brings us back to that central question, that contradiction. Why the customs closure? Why do you need to reinforce a physical border to get global access?
That's the genius of the model and also its complexity. It's this concept of inside territory, outside customs.
A special economic ghost.
Exactly. Geographically, there's no question. The island of Hainan is inside the territory of China. But for regulations, for customs, for tariffs, legally and financially, it is positioned outside the mainland customs zone.
It's a regulatory fiction.
It's a very powerful regulatory fiction. That separation, that invisible curtain, is the foundation for all the liberalization policies that follow.
So it's a way to create a sandbox, a zone where you can apply global best practices, like zero tariffs, without having to immediately overhaul the entire domestic system on the mainland.
Precisely. It's an insulated testing ground. And to make this work physically, they built this high-tech, dual-track custom system you'll hear called the first-line open, second-line controlled model.
Okay, let's walk through that because this is where the policy really gets technical.
Yeah.
Where's the first line?
The first line is the interface between Hainan and, the rest of the world, the international market.
So goods coming in from overseas.
Yes. And this line is designed to be open, as free as possible. Goods coming into Hainan from the global market are generally exempt from tariffs, consumption taxes, import VAT.
So mostly duty-free.
Mostly. It's governed by a few restricted lists. They call it the 1 negative 3 positives approach. But for the vast majority of goods, this line means zero tariff access to the island.
So if I'm a company in Singapore shipping, say, high-end electronics to a warehouse in Haikou, I treat it like I'm shipping to Hong Kong.
That is the regulatory intent, yes. You get zero tariff treatment. You can warehouse it, process it, distribute it, all without that immediate tax burden you'd face on the mainland.
But the whole point of the customs closure was to enforce the second line.
That's the other side of the coin. The second line is the barrier between Hainan and the rest of mainland China.
And that one is controlled.
Strictly controlled.
Yeah.
If goods move from Hainan to, say, Shanghai or Guangzhou, they are treated as imports. They're subject to all the normal mainland duties and customs rules.
Which is the protective layer.
It's the crucial fiscal protective layer. Without a controlled second line, the open first line would just become a massive loophole for tariff evasion. You'd flood the mainland market with cheap, untaxed global goods.
So the closure isn't about keeping people out of Hainan. It's about protecting the mainland's tax base while letting the world's goods into this kind of duty-free safe harbor.
It creates a perfectly ring-fenced environment, but, and this is key, to stop Hainan from just becoming a big transshipment hub, a place where containers just sit for a few days.
Right.
They introduced this powerful incentive to drive real economic activity on the island. And this is the linchpin of the entire trade model, the 30% value-added rule.
The anti-relabeling test. This seems like the most important rule for any business thinking of setting up shop there.
It absolutely is. The rule says that if you import goods to Hainan, process them, and then ship them to the mainland, they can enter the mainland duty-free, but only if the processing you did on the island increased the goods' value by more than 30%.
30% is a really high bar.
It's a very high bar. Simple relabeling, maybe some repacking. That's not going to cut it. That might add, 5–10% in value?
So what kind of activity does it force?
It forces genuine manufacturing. Deep processing, complex assembly with skilled labor, adding proprietary software or innovation. So, for example, if you import raw computer chips to Hainan, duty-free,
okay,
you then have to engineer them into a complex circuit board on the island to hit that 30% minimum before you can ship them, again, duty-free, to a factory in Shenzhen.
But if you just imported a finished TV and slapped a Made in Hainan sticker on it,
you'd fail the test.
wow.
And you'd pay the full mainland tariff when it crosses that second line.
So they're using this architecture to force industrial development onto an island that doesn't really have a big manufacturing base.
And that industrial mandate ties directly into China's bigger strategic goal here. They're using Hainan as a pilot zone to prove they can comply with high-standard global trade rules.
You mean like the RCEP and, more importantly, the CPTPP?
Exactly. CPTPP especially requires really high standards. We're talking about transparency for state-owned enterprises, digital economy rules, data flows, IP protection.
It's not just about cutting tariffs.
It's much, much more. And Hainan has been specifically tasked with trialing RCEP provisions and acting as a testing ground for CPTPP and the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, or DEPA. So this elevates the island. It's not just a regional economic zone. It's a national institutional laboratory.
It's a way for them to say to the world, look, we can play by your rules here in this controlled environment without changing our rules everywhere else overnight.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But to pull that off, you need to attract the biggest global companies and the best global talent. And that requires irresistible incentives.
It does. And that brings us right to the liberalization toolkit. The tax and regulatory policies designed to put Hainan on the same level as a Singapore or a Hong Kong.
And the guiding principles are pretty aggressive. Zero tariffs, low tax rates.
A simplified tax system, legal soundness. It's a blueprint for creating a unique low-tax jurisdiction inside what is, a high-tax national system.
Okay, let's start with corporate income tax, the CIT. The national rate is 25%. How does Hainan beat that?
The standard rate in Hainan, once it's fully operational post-2025, drops to a flat 15%.
Wow, a 10-point reduction.
It's a monumental fiscal incentive. For any large, profitable corporation, that's a massive deal.
But they had some guardrails in place during the run-up, right? You couldn't just open a shell company there to book profits and get the 15% rate.
No, absolutely not. And that shows they learned from some past speculative bubbles. To get that low rate before 2025, a company had to prove substantive operations.
What does that mean in practice?
It means your core leadership, your board, had to be physically located on the island. You had to exercise real control over accounting, assets, and people from Hainan.
So no brass plate on a door.
Exactly. And your main business had to fall within a published catalog of encouraged industries. It forces a real presence. It's designed to stop purely financial tricks.
That makes sense. But for attracting the actual people, the innovators, the executives, the individual income tax, the IIT is the real magnet.
This is maybe the most aggressive policy lever they have. For eligible high-end talent, the policy effectively caps their taxable income at a 15% flat rate.
And remind us, what's the top marginal rate on the mainland?
It's 45%.
So you're talking about a 30 percentage point difference.
Yep.
If you're a senior executive making, say, $500,000 a year, you're suddenly keeping 30% more of your income.
That fundamentally changes the math on a relocation decision. It's a huge, huge draw.
It puts Hainan in direct competition with places like Singapore and Dubai, which are known for attracting that kind of mobile international talent. What happens to the IIT system after 2025?
It gets even simpler, even more predictable. It'll switch to a very simple progressive scheme, just 3 tiers, 3, 10, and 15%.
And how do you qualify?
It's pretty straightforward. You need one of two things, either 183 days of annual residency in Hainan or a high annual income, which is benchmarked right now at around 300,000 RMB.
Which is about 85,000 US dollars.
Right. So it's designed to be easy to understand and extremely attractive.
Okay, so beyond tax, Hainan is also pioneering this regulatory tool, the negative list. It sounds technical, but it represents a huge shift in how they govern.
It is a complete reversal of the traditional playbook. For a long time, China used a positive list, meaning you can only do what is explicitly written down and approved.
Right.
The negative list approach flips that completely. It says everything is allowed, everything is permitted, unless it is explicitly restricted or prohibited on this short list.
It's a move from permission required to permission assumed.
That's a great way to put it. And for trade and services, Hainan was a crucial pioneer here. They were one of the first pilot zones to use a negative list for services trade.
How short was the list?
The free trade port list has only 70 items. That means vast areas of the economy were suddenly thrown open to foreign participation. Key sectors like tourism, medical services, finance, education, they were all significantly liberalized.
And this wasn't just a local experiment, right?
Yeah.
It became a template for the whole country.
Exactly. The framework they built in Hainan served as a key reference for the Ministry of Commerce when they put out the 2024 National and Pilot-Free Trade Zone negative lists. Hainan, it paved the road.
Okay, so that's services.
Yeah.
Now let's turn to foreign investment policy. Initially, Hainan's negative list for foreign investment was the most open in the country. It was the vanguard.
That's right. When it launched in 2020, it had only 27 restricted items. At the time, the national list had 33, and the other pilot-free trade zones had 30. Hainan was clearly pushing the envelope.
But this is where things started to get a little bit stuck. That list hasn't been updated since 2020.
And that's a huge red flag for investors. Liberalization is a race. If you're standing still, you're falling behind.
What's happened in the meantime?
In the meantime, the PFTZ negative list, which covers places like Shanghai and Guangdong, has been revised. It's now also down to 27 items matching Hainan.
So Hainan lost its numerical advantage.
It's more than that. The PFTZ version has been updated to clarify things, and in some cases, to fully eliminate restrictions, like getting rid of foreign investment caps in manufacturing.
So if I'm a foreign investor in manufacturing, the PFTZ list might actually be better for me now, even though the number of restricted items is the same.
That's the ambiguity trap. In theory, the specific Hainan list should take precedence, but the lack of updates creates uncertainty. Investors want predictability, and when the legal text your competitors are using is newer and clearer, it really compromises Hainan's investment environment.
Which brings us squarely to the reality check. You can have all the ambitious policies in the world, but execution is what matters. How did Hainan actually perform during this 2020 to 2024 prep phase?
Well, the performance data it's kind of bipolar. You've got this massive growth momentum on one side, but really significant scale limitations on the other.
Okay, let's start with the good news. The growth.
The growth is undeniable. Merchandise trade volume grew by 155% between 2018 and 2023. And utilized FDI, foreign direct investment, had an average annual growth rate of 267%.
267%. That's a staggering number. But how much of that is just growth from a very, very small base?
That's the essential question. And the data shows you have to be skeptical. We have to look at the absolute values. Despite that incredible growth rate, Hainan's FDI was only 2% of the national total in 2023.
Only 2%.
To put that in perspective, Guangdong province, right next door, attracted 12 times more FDI than Hainan did. So yes, it's growing incredibly fast, but it's starting from this deep deficit. The economic scale is just profoundly misaligned with the ambition.
And where's that money going? Are they succeeding in attracting those modern, high-value service industries they're targeting?
The sectoral data suggests not yet. The services trade is still really reliant on conventional sectors. Things like transport and business services still dominate.
What about the priority sectors? Finance.
Financial services, despite the new EF accounts, made up a minuscule 0.04% of services trade in 2023.
Wow. That's basically a rounding error. It suggests the new system is being used by existing traders, but it hasn't created a new financial industry on its own.
Not yet. And the data on intellectual property services is actually quite alarming.
What does that show?
IP services dropped sharply. It went from representing 17% of services trade in 2021 down to just 3% in 2024. That's a really bad sign if you're trying to build a knowledge-based economy.
So policy on paper is running way ahead of the structural reality on the ground. If we compare Hainan to its domestic peers, Shanghai, Guangdong, how big is that foundational gap?
It's vast. I mean, Hainan ranks 28th out of 31 provinces in GDP. Its reliance on foreign trade is only about 30%.
And what's that number for Shanghai?
Shanghai's is almost 90%. Beijing's is over 80%. So this isn't just a policy gap. It's a deep structural economic deficit.
And even the most aggressive policies in the world can't instantly fix decades of underdevelopment.
Right, and you see this structural weakness show up in the quality of governance. There's a National Institutional Innovation Index, and while Hainan has improved a bit, it's still way behind Guangdong and Shanghai, which are consistently number 1 and 2.
Which suggests the policy design from Beijing is excellent, but the local capacity to actually execute those policies is the real bottleneck.
That is precisely what the Doing Business rankings show. Hainan's overall ranking actually fell from 12th in 2017 down to 25th in 2021. And its biggest weaknesses were specifically in the market indicator and the administration indicator.
So market access and bureaucracy.
Exactly. It's direct evidence of a constraint in local capacity to execute these really complex, high-level reforms.
All of this context makes that ambition of becoming the Oriental Dubai or the next Singapore seem, well, like a generational leap. Is that even a fair comparison?
It's only a fair comparison if you use it to highlight what Hainan lacks. Singapore and Hong Kong didn't start from scratch. They had huge initial advantages: high literacy, strong, independent institutions.
Strong property rights, low corruption.
Right, and efficient bureaucracy. And most importantly, they had institutional autonomy. Singapore is a sovereign state. Hong Kong was a separate customs territory.
That autonomy lets you tailor your regulations and respond to the market with a speed that Hainan just can't replicate.
Exactly. Hainan lacks all of those initial conditions. It has this history of real estate boom and bust cycles, and it has to operate within a national plan. Its political and economic autonomy is, inherently constrained. So just replicating a 15% tax rate isn't enough to catch up.
Okay, so we have the enormous promise and these daunting structural challenges. Now we're in the crucial implementation phase from 2025 to 2034. What are the immediate hurdles that will define whether this succeeds or fails?
The biggest hurdle right now is policy uncertainty. The whole comprehensive liberalization plan for 2025, it hinges on the release of these core supporting documents that are still missing.
We're talking about the fine print.
The crucial fine print. We're missing the detailed catalog of import taxable commodities. That's the list that tells you what is not duty-free. And more importantly, we're still missing the revised foreign investment negative list.
The one that's been stuck since 2020.
Right. That gap between the big vision and the operational guidelines, it creates huge uncertainty. And long-term investors, the ones they really need, they hate uncertainty.
It's like having a map to a city, but no street signs. Just wait on the sidelines.
Yeah.
What about on-the-ground problems? What are foreign businesses already there complaining about?
We're hearing about persistent inefficiencies that really point to those local capacity constraints. Take the duty-free cosmetics trade. Great policy. But operationally, the current rules require Chinese labeling on both the inner and the outer packaging.
Which sounds like a bureaucratic headache that undermines the whole point of free trade.
It adds complexity, it adds cost, and it eats away at the efficiency you're supposed to get. Another example is this disconnect in compliance. The rules might require a sample of an imported product to be retained, but the responsible person who has to keep that sample is often based outside Hainan, maybe in Guangzhou. But the product itself is managed by a local distributor inside Hainan. This geographic split creates this massive inefficiency and confusion.
So let's talk about the administrative capacity. Hainan has a history of speculative bubbles, boom and bust. Is there a risk of that happening again?
The risk this time is different. It's less about a financial collapse and more about an institutional failure to deliver. The failure would be one of execution. This new model requires incredibly sophisticated, transparent, non-corrupt governance.
Right.
And given the poor performance in that administration indicator and the history, yeah, the capacity constraint in local execution is probably the single greatest long-term threat to the whole project.
Okay, moving from internal challenges to external ones. Let's talk about the threat that could undermine this whole thing, even if Hainan executes perfectly. The risk of policy dilution.
This is the paradox of being China's pioneer. If Hainan succeeds, its best policies get replicated nationally to drive broader reform. But the moment a policy is copied, Hainan loses its unique advantage.
Its whole reason for being gets eroded.
Its competitive edge is systematically eroded by its own success.
And we're already seeing this happen.
Absolutely. We talked about the foreign investment negative list being matched by the other PFTZs, but the biggest one recently is the extension of that 30% value-added rule.
Linchpin of the whole model.
To the Guangdong-Macau in-depth cooperation zone in Hainan, which is part of the Greater Bay Area right next door.
So if the single most powerful incentive for manufacturing is now available in a much more developed economic zone with better infrastructure, why would you choose Hainan?
That is the crux of the GBA siphoning effect. The Greater Bay Area, Guangdong, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, it's a mature ecosystem. It has better infrastructure, deeper capital markets, huge talent pools. As Hainan's policy advantages get diluted, the GBA's strengths could just naturally siphon away resources, talent, and investment.
So proximity becomes a huge threat.
A perpetual competitive threat. It forces Hainan to constantly try and redefine its niche.
And that must be difficult when you're trying to serve two masters. You have to develop your own provincial economy while also serving as this national pilot zone.
It's a unique dual mandate, and sometimes those goals conflict. The national pilot function emphasizes building this perfect institutional architecture, but the local development needs might be more urgent, like just building better roads or schools. It's a real tension.
Okay, we've covered a lot of the challenges, the policy gaps, the capacity issues, the siphoning risk. Let's end on the opportunities. What does Hainan have to leverage to succeed in this next decade?
The first and maybe the most durable opportunity is its geography, its centrality to deepening cooperation with ASEAN. ASEAN is China's largest trade partner, and it's projected to be the world's fourth largest economy by 2030.
And Hainan is the natural bridge.
It's the perfect maritime and economic bridge. It's got proximity, it's got marine resources, it's already tasked with developing the blue economy. It can be the gateway for China-ASEAN collaboration. It also has, cultural and diaspora ties throughout Southeast Asia that give it a unique soft power advantage.
And the second opportunity is to work with its powerful neighbors, not just compete against them.
Inter-PFTZ coordination, exactly. Hainan has been given more policy autonomy than other zones. It should use that power to anchor specialized initiatives that complement, say, Hong Kong's financial markets or Shenzhen's high-tech industry.
So don't try to be another Shenzhen.
Don't try to be another Shenzhen. Carve out a unique niche. Maybe it's high-end medical tourism combined with offshore IP services. Find something specific that secures its relevance in the national network instead of trying to replicate what others already do better.
So the island-wide customs closure, finalized on December 18th, 2025, really represents this fundamental shift. It's the creation of a special economic ghost, geographically inside China, but financially outside its traditional walls. The promise of zero tariffs, low taxes, and frictionless capital. It's all there on paper. But the delivery of that promise now hinges entirely on the local government's administrative capacity to execute these incredibly complex reforms. Success means navigating severe economic constraints, overcoming that local inertia, and fighting off the constant risk of policy dilution from China's bigger economic powerhouses. The Hainan FDP initiative isn't a short-term project, it's a 3-decade-long program, and its ultimate success is going to depend entirely on the fidelity of local execution in the face of these immense pressures. This makes it essential to keep watching, to really understand the future of China's high-level economic integration with the world.